Hi! Song 6 on the album is entitled Convergence, and it takes place several years after the events on Song 5. And I started to look into something at this point that I'd always had a problem with in lucid dreams: staying focused. It's too easy to become distracted, and even when lucid, it's easy to get caught up in all the scenarios that your mind creates for you in the dream. And I'd heard that a good way to maintain focus was through meditation. Being able to quieten down your mind and focus on a single word or a single thought, or even to focus on your intention to have a lucid dream, while letting go of the distracting thoughts that constantly come into your mind, seemed like the perfect exercise for achieving the same goal in dreams. Because at the end of the day, it's that incessant stream of inner dialogue that becomes the programmer of the dream world. And because everything in there is a manifestation of your thoughts, being in control of your thoughts is being in control of the dream. A quiet mind is a peaceful dream, whereas a busy mind will most likely mean you have nightmares. And meditation is something that I had dabbled with a few years before, and it had been a big help when it came to defeating that entity that lived in the bedroom cupboard that I spoke about in the last song. So at this point, I started to go along to a meditation class.
In a church with no God, where they pray with no words.
A church with no God, where they pray with no words, where I hoped to achieve the inner silence and focus that was required. And I feel that I must give a mention and a big thank you to the facilitator, whose name was Ross Dayton, because if it hadn't been for him and his class, much of this story would never have come to pass. So I went along there on and off for a while, until one evening a series of synchronistic events led me there. And the first thing that I noticed on that fateful evening was a strong sense of deja vu when the centre's resident cat crossed my path as I walked up the hall. Then I went into the kitchen, which was the waiting area for the classes, and there, sitting in front of me, was someone with a very familiar face. That person went on to become my wife, and I've always said to her that the reason she's so familiar is that we had met previously in dreams. She was the dream girl that I followed home in Song 3 in order to determine whether dream characters were real or not. And then on the next album, there's a song which is an account of the first time we met in dreams, long, long before we ever met in the real world.
As I approach, the cat appears. It stares at me, I feel deja vu. When I look up, she's sitting there. I'm doubting what I see.
These parts of the album where the dreamer and the dream girl meet in their dreams and then again in the real world are entitled Entanglement. And this is hinting at the possibility that maybe connections can be made between people in dreams in the same way that scientists have found that connections are made between particles when they can interact over a vast distance after becoming entangled. Maybe we too can interact over a distance with people in our dreams through some kind of quantum connection. Either way, it's a romantic thought to think that we had previously met in some other dimension in dreams, and then that somehow through entanglement, we found each other in the real world, and that those corny lines that are often used in first encounters, "Do I know you from somewhere? Have we met before? You seem so familiar," that in our case, there may have been some truth behind them.
Do I know you from somewhere?
I've seen your face before.
This all seems so familiar.
The next part of this song is called The Shooting Star Child, Part 2, and it takes place a few years after I had met my wife, and it's an account of the day that our son was born. It starts off with us racing towards a sanctuary filled with angels, otherwise known as the maternity ward, and then what follows is what I think a rather nice account of my wife's labour and the birth of my son, given how blood-splattered and gory the actual events were in real life. Needless to say, everything worked out fine, and I found myself once again holding a tiny baby in my hands, just like in the dream. And again there was that familiarity, which may possibly come from the fact that he was the Star Child in my dream. And although the first part of the Shooting Star Child theme is in song 4, it's actually chronologically out of place. I have to admit artistic license there, mainly because musically that theme fitted nice at that point in the album to recur again later on. But all of the events in song 4 actually happened after I had met the dream girl, my wife. And not long after I had the dream about the Star Child, I discovered that my wife was pregnant. Had that Star Child dream been a premonition?
When will this all end? I can't take anymore. But you very scream. The tiny babies in our hands.
If you asked me straight out, do I actually believe that I met my wife in a dream before I met her in the real world? Or do I believe that I had a premonition about my son's birth in a dream? I'd probably give you the rational answer and say it was just a coincidence. But when I think about all the coincidences and all the weird synchronicities and strange events that have happened throughout my life, and all the stories from other people who have had similar experiences, you start to wonder whether these events have some kind of deeper meaning. Is there a higher order behind these things, or do we as little sentient pieces of the universe just like to see patterns in the chaos? Patterns that give us a feeling that there's some higher purpose to this seemingly random configuration of atoms, particles, forces, energy, whatever you choose to call it. Who knows? What we do know, however, is that we have the unique ability to know ourselves as part of this universe and to use that consciousness creatively in this world or in our dreams. And in my opinion, the best thing that this universe has come up with so far is self-awareness, and the ability for those self-aware beings to then create their own internal universe. It's like the universe created us, and then we turn the whole thing round and create it in our dreams, like we're the centre point of consciousness between the inner world and the outer world. And I think there's a kind of divine symmetry to that. And it doesn't matter whether I actually met my wife and my son in the dream world before I found them in the real world. These events still happened, and they're open to interpretation. And at the end of the day, it'll make a nice story to tell the grandkids. Thanks for watching.